Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Sipping Wealth Live, where I bring you news, tips, and tricks on how to wealth up. Hello, y'all. So today I will be going over the FIRE method. This is an amazing method. There's a lot of people that has been talking about retiring early. Oh, I want to retire by the age of 45, 50. Um, Especially I could talk to like those millennials in my age group and things like that, where they're like, oh, I want to retire as early as possible. So I wanted to make sure I hopped on a live today to bring you all the fire method. I didn't come up with the fire method, but it is um, widely known, and I'm just going to explain it and then give y'all some tips and things to look out for, and ways that you can apply this method and hopefully get that early retirement that you're pushing for. All right. Okay, let's get started. So, for those of you tuned in with me, be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, Sipping Wealth, and be sure to hit the share button so that your friends, families, and loved ones could wealth up with us. Um, but yes, let's go ahead and jump into the topics. Also, if you have any questions, things like that, feedback, drop it in the comment section. Say, hey, girl, all that good stuff. All right, y'all, let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, so the FIRE method stands for financial independence and early retirement, or retirement early. There you go. Um, so financial independence, retire early. There you go. All right. So with the fire method, it's essentially, like I said, breaking down different things that you can do so that you can push for early retirement and being able to retire as early as possible. All right. So I'm going to go over some of the key components of it, and then take it from there. So the first component is a high savings rate. So right now, a lot of banks are offering above a 4% percent on savings accounts. There are even accounts out there that are offering more than 5%. So really, I did a post on my Facebook not too long ago. Maybe it wasn't long ago. Maybe like over a month ago, where I shared quite a bit of different banks that you can go ahead and get over 4% savings accounts with those banks. A lot of your bigger banks like Bank of America, Chase, and Wells Fargo tend to not have as high, or even Navy Federal tend to not have as high as a savings account, as a rate on the savings accounts. But being able to go after those other banks, or even making sure that you are researching and looking out for banks that are offering better interest rates for your money that you're actually saving in the bank account. Um, so high savings rate, and then another key component is just making sure that you're saving all together. So you're typically, um, p- um, ideally, you should be pushing to save as close as possible to 50% of your income. I know it seems like bizarre, like, what? How am I going to save 50% of my income? But you want to get as close to that as possible. You want to minimize your spending habits, things like that, so that you're actually putting that money aside, and even investing. So even if it's not 50% of every paycheck, but knowing that, hey, the money that I do have stored is working, is gaining interest, and I'm gaining that amount of money through my investment channels, or even picking up a side hustle, which I'll get to later. The other, which I kind of hinted at, is investing. So savings is, of course, a huge, and making sure that you are saving your money and having that emergency fund, all that good stuff. But making sure that you invest is crucial, because we do want to make sure that your money is growing. So the S&P 500 right now on average is doing 15%. So even if you don't even know what you're doing, if you're like, yo, I don't even know what stocks to go ahead and invest in. I don't know where to start. The easiest thing to go ahead and start with is the S&P 500. Like, that's like the bare minimum. If you're like, yo, I'm not even gonna look at this stuff, like different stocks and things, and move money around and do the whole shebang. The S&P 500, like I said, is at an average of 15%. So if your money is not even gaining that, you might as well go ahead and throw it into that S&P 500. Right now, we did have quite a loss in the S&P 500 in stocks overall. A lot of stocks are down because of the market shift currently. But I'm just talking about an average percentile over years. But yeah, just making sure that you're aiming to build a sustainable investment portfolio. That's ideal. And ideally, your investment portfolio can add to being able to provide you a nice stream of passive income. And that could even lead to being able to cover some of the living expenses as well. Um, the other, which I hinted at, is living a minimalist and frugal lifestyle. Although we want the life of luxury and to, eat out every day and brunch and spa and whatever the case may be, whatever your thing is, it's just making sure that we're living below our means versus adding on additional expenses, adding on additional debt that's going to overall hurt us in the future, especially when we don't have retirement savings or we don't have investment vehicles already in place. So we want to make sure that we're being a lot smarter when it comes to those. So that in embracing the minimalist lifestyle, I know that's not social media glorified on social media. Social media is showing you, oh, you have to buy the latest thing and you have to glamorize your lifestyle. But just embracing that minimalist lifestyle so that you're able to ideally live, get to retirement as early as possible. So this is, like I said, is that FIRE method. How do we get to retirement as quick as possible? And it's living that minimalist lifestyle. The other is to optimize your income. So just this includes seeking like higher paying jobs. If you've been at your job for 3+5+ years and you're barely getting an increase, you're still getting that 2-3% increase on annual increase, then you may want to look for a higher paying job. Or even adding a side hustle or looking into opening up a business, or like I said, some kind of side income that's going to increase your overall money that's coming into your household, so that you're able to do those things. Put into investments, grow your savings, all that. So optimizing your income. The other is tracking and planning. I know I talk about this at this point, y'all. I'm like a broken record. I talk about budgeting every single live because it is so crucial. It is absolutely pivotal to your financial status and your financial house and growth overall. Just being able to make sure that you are tracking and planning. In order to have an effective financial house, you need to know where your money is doing, and then you need to tell your money where to go. Okay. And having a plan behind that is saying, hey, if you know that I want to retire by 55, create a plan around that. If you need to reach out to a financial advisor, I do have financial advisors in my network. So if you want to send a message and ask for the information from my financial advisors, things like that, feel free to reach out. But making sure that, hey, you create that plan and then work backwards so that you're actually hitting that target or as close as possible to it. Because without a plan, then you plan to fail, right? Mm-hmm. Cool quote. But yes. Okay. All right. The next is the last thing is the next component is financial independence. So making sure that your returns on investment is covering your living expenses without having to solely rely on being employed. So you want to build your investment portfolio to the point where it's like, hey, my investment portfolio is so stacked that it can cover more than cover my living arrangements, my living expenses. And then for how long? How long can that investment account cover this? Do I have an annuity in place? Do I have life insurance in place? Do I have these market account in place? Do I have these financial assets or vehicles in place so that, hey, if my employment income were to stop today, I still have money coming in. I still have streams of income that is actually accumulating, growing, and paying me out because I'm not solely relying on employment. That's how you get to retirement early. All right, the next is retirement planning. So ideally, you do want to make sure that you start planning for retirement at and by your 30s. 30s, latest 40s, you want to make sure that you're planning for retirement. If you're wanting to retire early, then that just moves up the timeline. You want to start planning in your 30s. If you want to retire by 50, 45, then 20s. Right? So we want to make sure you kind of stay keep that in the back of our minds that, hey, when do I need to start planning for retirement? It really depends on when you want to retire. If you know that, hey, I'm gonna be working my whole life, then hey, you know, do your thing. All right, so here are some tips that I want to leave y'all with as well. I want to make sure I'm not missing anyone's questions or anything like that. Okay, we're Gucci. All right. Tip number one is making sure that you create a detailed budget, y'all. Like I said, a budget is crucial. That's step number one. If you want to, yeah, if you want to make sure that you are building your financial house the right way, start with a budget because the budget is going to identify where your holes are. You're spending too much money here. You have unnecessary subscriptions, and or you're making too little money, or dang, where is all my money going? I hear time and time again whenever clients come into the office to file their taxes, they're like, what, I made all that money this year, I don't even know where it went. Well, you wouldn't know because you don't have a detailed budget. You don't have a budget. So making sure that you have a budget, you're tracking all your income and expenses. There are apps out there. I had an entire live. You can go to the YouTube channel and check out the live where I literally talked about different apps that you can use for to assist you with your budgeting. So you don't have to do pen and paper. You don't have to do an Excel sheet. You can literally do an app that sits on your phone that syncs up to your accounts, that makes it a lot easier for you. Okay, this is financial technology. FinTech is here, so it's here to make our lives easier. So let's go ahead and tap into it. All right, the next is to make sure that we have an emergency fund. So of course, I know you've heard this time and time again. Like, you're not new to this at this point. You've heard have an emergency fund, but making sure that you in that emergency fund, you are saving at least 3 to 6 months worth of your living expenses, because incidents happen, things happen, employment gets lost or business hits a dry spell, where you're like, oh my gosh, my business is not doing too well and it's been a few months. Well, your business should have a fund where, hey, I can meet payroll for the next 3 to 6 months, even if we don't bring in revenue for 3 months. Okay, you should be able to still meet payroll and still have your operations running. Do we want to be in a situation where, hey, our business is not bringing in enough revenue? No, absolutely not. But does it happen? It happened. And in those instances, businesses are running, they're scattering. They're like, where can I find the quickest loan or funding or whatever the case may be? But you should have a plan for that. And your budget would have been able to identify that had you had one. All right. The next is a debt repayment plan. So I'm a huge advocate to debt management, not necessarily paying off all your debt, but just being able to properly manage your debt and leverage debt, right? So ideally prioritizing your highest interest debt is the one to go to, because that's the one that's burning the biggest hole. So if you know you have debt sitting at 25% and you have no investment vehicle that's earning you more than 25%, then that debt has to go because that is burning a huge hole in your pocket, right? Even at 25%, you want to let that go. But if, say, you have a debt that's sitting at 3%, 4%, then you want to make sure that you're concentrating on that higher interest debt versus just paying debt off just to pay it off because you like to see the number. But we want to make sure that we're investing our money as well. um the next tip I want to leave you with is to maximize your retirement contribution. So you are able to go ahead and put in $7,000, moving forward, into your retirement, your IRA account, your Roth account, your adding that extra money, contribute your max, go ahead and max out, and then the rest of the money that you have available, allow it to be what you're gonna be, what you're living on. Just go ahead and max out the savings, and then that you have that tax incentive. So depending on if you're doing a Roth or traditional retirement account, that, hey, I'm paying tax now but not later, or that you're not paying tax now, which is a nice tax savings, but when you go ahead and retire, you're going to be paying later. So depending on what retirement account you have set up, but making sure that you go ahead and max that out. It's $7,000. If you make $70,000 for the year, taking out 7,000, let's put a cleaner number. If you make, so I could do the math. So if you're making 60K for the year and you're like, oh man, the contribution amount is 6,000, let's say. Well, go ahead, it's 10% of your income. That at $6,000, that's $500 a month that you're saying, hey, I want to make sure that I'm able to go ahead and hit my retirement number, because I don't want to be working for the rest of my life or have to work for the rest of my life because I don't have a retirement plan. And the earlier we start investing, the better, because that allows our money to accumulate um, over time. The next is to diversify our investment. So we can do a mix of investment: stocks, bonds, real estate, index funds, things like that. It helps with mitigating your risk. But before you just jump out and just start pouring your money into this investments and different investments and things like that, I highly recommend that you seek a licensed um, and qualified financial advisor, so that you're well advised versus someone that's just going to throw your money into whatever fund, just to get the job done. Somebody that's actually going to work for your benefit. All right. Automate your savings. Go ahead and set up automatic transfers into a different savings account or into an account at another bank. I always recommend this because a lot of times we tend to look at the number in our bank account where we're like, oh, I got all that money to spend, versus saying, so we end up spending all the money in our account. And then now we're penny pinching, trying to get to the next pay period, or we're like, where did all our money go? Versus automatically transferring, having the automatic transfer on, which I personally have it on my accounts. Every week it's automatically transferring. So I know, hey, whatever's left in there is for operating expenses, or if it's my personal account, then I know that whatever's left in there is for the bills or whatever's coming out of there. So the others monies that's automatically being transferred, that's out of sight. So, and then eventually I'll go and look at those accounts, see if I have enough to go ahead and put somewhere else to invest in. But automate your savings. That's going to be it's a huge hack way, to make sure that you're actually saving versus, like I said, spending all the money in your account and then you look back and you're like, where did all that money go? So we don't want to end up there. The next is to make sure we're living below our means. Y'all, I know that's difficult, even for me sometimes. That's why I automate my savings. Because sometimes I'm like, ooh, I deserve sushi, knowing dang well I had sushi last week, but we're working on it. So make sure you're living below your means. And education. Make sure that you're educating yourself, just like you're taking the time out to watch this live or listen to it. Make sure that you are educating yourself, and from a knowledgeable source, not just any random source that you see online, but actually looking up the information, going to an accredited source. But really making sure that you take the time to educate yourself about your finances and finances overall, because that's what's going to move the needle. All right. And the last thing I want to touch on is insurance, y'all. Um, Quite a bit of people run from insurance, or they're like, "Oh no, insurance is a scam." Da, da, da. But it's all fine and dandy until you really needed it, right? So making sure that you have adequate health insurance. Um, I know, like younger folk, for the most part, you're not having as many medical visits or things like that. But as you get older, definitely making sure that you keep revisiting the policy that you have, um, and that goes across the board. So life insurance, the life insurance that I had when I was in college, I stacked on a few more, three policies since then, because every time, I'm at a different financial marker in my life. So that policy that I got way back when, when I was like, oh, all I could afford is $50 a month, for coverage, it's not going to be enough moving forward. So making sure you revisit your life policies, things like that, and make sure that you're properly insured. Um, you're your greatest asset. If you're not properly insured, then, or at least having the life insurance benefit of the cash value and accumulation, then it really leaves you open to a lot of concerns and holes in your financial house. So I want to make sure that's patched up, right? And we are safe and secured in that manner. All right, y'all. Okay, so I don't want to make this live too long, so that when you're listening back, you can get all the tips and things like that from this live, because this is a lot of important information. If you are just hopping on, I see the numbers going up and down. But if you're just hopping on, be sure to take a look at the video from the beginning. Even if you just want to listen to it while you're doing your thing, and then share with your families, friends, and loved ones. Hit that share button. But also make sure that you are tapped in to next Tuesday, where I go over a new topic, and every Tuesday at 6 p.m., where I bring you news, tips, and tricks, y'all. So that's it for tonight. Alrighty, y'all have a beautiful, amazing Tuesday. And let's not forget, wealth up.